This is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. I'm recording here in the Piazza Navona in Rome, and I'm going to talk about the bones of St. Peter's, how I had the luck and fortune to go see the bones of St. Peter, and just some new things about St. Peter's Basilica that I didn't appreciate the last time I was here 6 years ago. So before we begin, let's start with a prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Secutor in principio, et nunc, et semper, et secula seculorum. Amen. So I posted that I was coming to Rome in the community group over on the channel, and so I'm here in Rome. Now I've been blessed to have been here 2 times before. I came in the January of 2002, and then in the summer of 2016, which was a special Jubilee year, so it was pretty crowded that summer. I didn't have any videos back then because I wasn't doing the channel back then. So this is my 3rd time here, and this is my first full day in Rome. I already went to the Vatican. I did all the Vatican things early. I made an appointment to go to the necropolis, and then I had a guided tour, just a guide of the Basilica of St. Peter, and then I also did the Dome, and then I'm going back in the afternoon to do the Vatican Museum, which I've been blessed to have gone to 2 other times as well. So the reason I want to do this video, and I'm going to try to do one every day that I'm here, given that this is Rome, is the necropolis. So the other 2 times I was here, I just kind of did the mainstream, didn't make any private appointments for anything. This time around, I really wanted to go to the necropolis. So if you're not familiar with this, especially Protestants, why is St. Peter St. Peter's? I mean, sometimes we just don't think about names for names. St. Peter's is St. Peter's Basilica because that's where the bones of St. Peter were located. So if we go back in time, St. Peter, we know through historical records, this isn't like hocus pocus Catholic Church records, we know through historical records that Peter was martyred in 64 AD in present day, what we would call the Vatican, but back then it was the Vatican Hill, and this was out in the outskirts of Rome. So this was on the other side of the Tiber River, which at that time in the 1st century AD was mostly going to be some houses, mostly farmland and private residences or private areas of the emperor. So at the time when he was martyred, there was a circus, like this place. The Piazza Navona originally was a circus where horses would run and so forth. So back there in Vatican, the Pope Nero, Emperor Nero, I should say, had his own circus. And so Peter was crucified because he was not a Roman citizen, unlike St. Paul. He was crucified, but we know he wanted to be crucified upside down because he didn't want to be crucified in the same fashion as Jesus Christ. So after he died, the early Christians asked for his body to bury it, and the Roman authorities gave him permission, and they buried him there on the site where he was martyred. You can see that site because it's the entrance to get into the necropolis. So before I continue with kind of the history of Peter's bones, you can make an appointment to see Peter's bones. It's in the necropolis or City of the Dead, and it's an hour tour. You can go online. I'll put the link in, see if I remember to put in the link. So if you guys are going to Rome, make the appointment ahead of time. You have to, you can pick the language it's in and whatnot, and you can see this. It's only like €10, if I'm not mistaken. So after he was buried, the early Christians buried him on that site. The obelisk that's in the Piazza of St. Peter's was originally in the middle of that circus, and so they moved it later to put in the middle of the Piazza of St. Peter's. So the early Christians buried him there, and they put just a very simple grave, because remember, in 64 AD, Catholicism is persecuted. Nero, of course, blamed the fires of Rome on the Christians, and so they didn't really have a lot of license to do what they wanted. They were lucky to even get his body. So they buried him in a very simple kind of area with some stones around it. Later on, as Christianity grew, and eventually with Constantine, it was legalized in 313 AD, Edict of Milan. So at that point, Constantine was like, he became a Christian at his deathbed, and he gave land to the Christians, to the various churches, the present-day churches that you find in Rome today. So a lot of these basilicas, a basilica was like a kind of a mercantile building, for lack of a better word. And the early Christians then turned them into churches, because before that, all the masses had to be in people's houses and so forth. And so now we could have masses in nice churches. And this is talked about a little on the episode of if a Protestant time traveled to 325 AD, what would they find? And you would find a lot of masses being done in public, and you would find masses, not Protestant services. And the theology, of course, at 325 AD was nothing like you would find in a Protestant church. It just wasn't. So at that point, Constantine built the first St. Peter's church. And if you ever go to St. Peter's, that's the floor beneath it in the crypts where all the popes are buried. But that was the original church, and it was built by Constantine to honor St. Peter. And they put his bones in a nicer area, so it's a nicer area. And so that church existed for 1,200 years up until about 1500 AD, and the church was crumbling because it was an older church. And then at that point, Julius II, who was Pope at the time, decided to build the present-day St. Peter's, which took about 100 years to build. And some of the most famous painters and architects were involved in that. Michelangelo, for example, designed the dome. You have Bramante would design quite a bit of the interior and so forth. And Bernini, of course, did the colonnade and the baldacchino and some other parts of it. And so that's where you get the present-day St. Peter's. So with the bones, you could take a tour and you see like the old necropolis where early pagans and Christians were buried. So what Constantine did was, when he decided to build like a nice official church over there, it was on a hill. So he had to fill up that hill. So he essentially, there was already a kind of cemetery, mausoleum, necropolis for pagans and some Christians, but mostly pagans. So what he did is he just filled it up with dirt. So if you imagine this as a hill, like that, he got that dip part and just filled that part up with dirt. And there were mausoleums there of essentially a cemetery, a necropolis, a city of the dead. He just filled it up. So then he built the church on top of that, and then today St. Peter's was built on top of that. So the good thing about that, of him piling the dirt, is that we can go in there. So you can take that tour and just see these tombs and mausoleums, literally avenues and walkways of the city of the city of the dead. Now, while we were in there, we couldn't take photos. They just, no way you could take photos. There's no way they let you take photos of St. Peter's bones. So, but it's just a great tour to see that just the history that is there. So if you ever go to St. Peter's, I think some of you guys know this, like the altar where Bernini's baldacchino, or that gigantic bronze canopy, is on a perfect axis. So if you go up from that altar, you go to the pinnacle of Michelangelo's dome. And if you go below the altar all the way down, it's right above the bones of St. Peter. All this is just history built upon history. And so, look, for any Protestants who doubt any of this, remember the early Christians had oral tradition. The same reason how St. Helena, Constantine's mom, when she went to the Holy Land, she found the true cross, because the Christians that were there after Christ died kept this alive and passed it down to generations. Oh, this is where blah blah was buried. Oh, this is where blah blah happened. This is how we know these things. So it was the same thing with Peter's bones, is that they knew Peter was a very special person at the time. So when he died, they buried it, and then through oral tradition, and of course through records, we have records of all these things, that we knew that St. Peter was buried there. And after Christianity got legalized, they built a nicer church, and then everything, and then of course St. Peter's today is just an amazing accomplishment of architecture as well. A couple of things. So the last time I was here, I did not go to the crypts where the different popes are buried. And so I got to see the tomb of Pius X, one of the great fighters against modernism. He's actually buried in St. Peter's Church on the left when you walk in. But in the crypt, you can go see a lot of the more modern popes. Pius XI, Pius XII. You can see John Paul I. Benedict's tomb is over there as well. Going back up into the actual church, you can see John Paul II's tomb is on the right, and John the 23rd is also on the right as well. And from what I understand, Pope Francis is going to be buried in St. Mary Major. He wants to be buried over there. So that's what I've noticed. The last time I was here, I don't think, well, Benedict was still alive, and honestly, I don't remember where I think John Paul II was in a crypt, but I think Francis, after John Paul became a saint, brought his sarcophagus to be in the actual St. Peter's Basilica, and there's some kneelers there where you can kneel and pray and so forth. But for any of you who've never been to St. Peter's, I mean, it's just so beautiful, right? So beautiful. And later, when I do the Vatican Museum tour, I'll be able to see the Sistine Chapel. That's, of course, where the papal conclaves happen, and we'll probably have one pretty soon because Francis is pretty old. So it's just be exciting to be able to see that again. And look, one of the benefits of coming here in January is that's the lowest of low tourist season, and the weather really is not that bad. It's maybe in the, I'd say, upper 50s, and it's quite comfortable, and it's pretty sunny. So it's great to see that. So guys, post in the comments if you've ever been to St. Peter's. Tomorrow, God willing, I should be recording from Naples or Pompeii because I'm going to be going down there. In future episodes, of course, I'll probably be going to the catacombs of St. Calixtus, which is probably the most famous of the catacombs. And I'll try to do some videos of other places as well. Guys, post in the comments. Until next time. Take care. God bless.